I've done quite a lot of this technically.
So do you know the relative merits of the various software tools then, Peter?
At the top end, yes, but I don't. They aren't simple to use.
They are not.
The professional ones are not. No, because they've got so much in them. There's a big learning curve.
Okay.
But there are simpler ones like Audacity, which may be easier to go on, but it's difficult to make work with more than 2 tracks.
Right.
Audacity.
So if you move up,
you can add tracks in, but if you want to record live, you only get 2 standard.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Gosh, I didn't even know
that. But then, having recorded them, you can then add more without problem.
But not in parallel.
Not at the same time, but you can add them to what's already there.
Yes.
So you can mix on the screen.
Yeah. So not in parallel, but in sequence. A sequence of pairs.
I'm going to talk about GarageBand, which is a kind of free thing that comes with the Mac. And I discovered quite recently that GarageBand, I mean, it's actually quite powerful and it's been fine for what we've needed, but it does have a limit on the number of tracks that you can handle at once. I don't know about the number of live tracks. I think you can probably do
8.
4. Is it 8? Right.
8 on GarageBand, yeah.
But I've discovered that you can get a free 90-day trial of the next version up, which is called Logic Pro, which is quite expensive. It's about 200 quid, but 3 months is quite a long time. And it looks pretty much like GarageBand in the kind of interface. It just does far more. It's far more powerful. And so if you want to experiment, then you can start with GarageBand, get familiar with it, and then upgrade to Logic Pro and have 3 months to decide whether you think it's worth it.
And is GarageBand only available on the Mac?
Yeah.
And so is Logic. That's only on the Mac.
I sometimes use something called Soundtrap, which I find very easy to use, which is free on the web. So that might be something, if you haven't done it before, I think it's probably one of the most, and you don't have a Mac. I agree, if you have a Mac, GarageBand is fairly similar, but Soundtrap is very useful on the PC if you...
Okay.
Yeah, we use that for some
Catherine,
stuff.
Yes,
can you so what's the difference between Audacity and Soundtrap? For somebody who's starting out, do you have an opinion on which is better?
Well, what I do, and I still do this now, and it's maybe not the best way to do it. Audio is not my speciality at all, and neither is video really. But what I've learned on the job, like Stephen, but I find Soundtrap easier to use. It's more like GarageBand. It's easier to move the tracks and so on. Okay. But I only use the free version. I used to have the paid version. You can subscribe, and in the free version, there are limits on what you can do to adjust the individual tracks. So once I've sort of lined it up in Soundtrap, I put it in Audacity.
Okay, so you use both programs.
How many tracks at once, Catherine?
I've had about 70 on Soundtrap. You can have loads. Oh, hang on, I just need to plug my computer in. So it is, yeah, it's good. I would recommend it. And I don't actually think the subscription is very much. It's just mine's run out.
I subscribed for a year for Aidan for some reason. I can't remember how much it was. Maybe about £50, something like that for a year. Right. Okay. I'm just saying that I'm pointing out to those who've joined the meeting, I am recording this. Okay, just so you know. Okay. Shall I hand over to you, Stephen? Do you want to kick off?
Sure. So I'm going to start assuming no knowledge, but I suspect that's way the wrong point for most of you. But I thought it was probably best to start that way. And I'm going to talk in general terms initially about how I've approached the whole thing in a generic way that perhaps doesn't specifically relate to one program or computer system. And then I think the idea is we have breakout rooms that then dig into more detail and perhaps show some examples of how it works in practice. So forgive me if this is granny and sucking eggs stuff, but I'm going to share screen and just run through some points. Right, can everybody see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, so what you need to do this is a computer, and if you have a Mac system, it will come with a software program that's available. It might not actually be installed, but it can be installed free of charge. And I use a thing called GarageBand. But if you have a PC computer, then you can install something like Audacity, which does the same thing. It's a very different looking interface. With the Apple system, you can actually use GarageBand on a tablet, on an iPad, and Arwen has done that and may have some insights into doing that. It's a stripped down version, and it's a bit harder to manipulate, partly because it's a small screen. So using a desktop Mac, I think, is much easier. The software package is more powerful, and you can see what you're doing, which is a big advantage when you're dealing with many tracks. So you need your computer to start off with some description of device, and then you need audio recordings. And I think, by and large, I'm not really an expert on this, but .mp3 or .wav files you can handle. I think you can also handle .mp4 files.
Yeah.
You have to be a bit careful because some MP4 files, I think maybe they're prefixed or suffixed A, are movie files, and they are harder to deal with if you're using an audio mixing program, in my experience. So that
Stephen, can I just say something there?
Yeah, go ahead.
Something I've learned recently with this problem with MP4 and MP3 is that it's very easy to change it from one format to the other. If you just Google converting MP4 to MP3 in Google, there are various online sites, and they'll just do it straight away for you, and it just strips away the video, and you've then got an audio file, which is what you need for what Stephen's talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, from my experience, I'd very much recommend setting up a free account with a site called cloudconvert.com. They have all the file conversions you could ever want, and it's free. It works very, very well. Would recommend that.
Or if you have a PC, you have something called VLC player. It has like a traffic cone as the logo. You can do it through that too.
Yes, and actually within that, if you have a Mac, then QuickTime, which is the kind of built-in movie program, does the same thing. You can play it on QuickTime and save it as an audio recording. So there are ways of doing it. But one thing I would say is that you want to, if you're doing this sort of stuff, you want to simplify your life as much as possible. So getting people to start and give you the right stuff for your mixing in the right format, with the right name, in the right place is a really big deal. You have lots of tracks coming in. It's so easy to get confused about what's what. And if they're all coming in on email at different times, that's been one of the challenges as far as I was concerned. So what I've gone for is to try and get people to do it right in the first place, and then send it in. It doesn't always work, but there we are. So that's what you need as a mixer. But of course, the performers need something to make their recordings on. And that needs to have a microphone. And amazingly, the smartphones that almost everybody has now have the capacity for doing that quite well. So if you have an Apple phone or an Android, there will be some built-in software on the phone that allows you to make recordings. If it's an Apple phone you have, there's a thing called Voice Memo. It's an app within the phone. It comes with the phone, and it works amazingly well. I mean, there are some limitations because these voice recorders, generally speaking, have built-in algorithms which focus on the speaking voice range. So music, maybe it's not quite so good at distinguishing between different volumes. It maybe squidges them together, and perhaps high and low notes are not so well represented. But I found it remarkably good. So you can simply record yourself on a phone, make an audio track, and then send it to the person doing the mixing. You don't have to use a phone. You can use a computer hooked up to a microphone, and you get USB microphones that can plug directly into your computer, and you can record sound that way. But there are also things called audio interfaces that you can plug into your computer, and then plug in a regular microphone into the audio interface, and that will convert the audio signal through into a digital signal that the computer can recognize. But one way or another, using these various, and there's bound to be other ways of doing this, you can end up with an audio track that will be suitable for mixing. So what's not needed? Just to reiterate, any experience at all. You can learn to do this, I think, quite easily by trial and error. And everything that I know about this, I've learned just by trial and error since last March. I have no expertise in this at all. And I'm going to talk about what I do, but I'm sure there are lots of alternatives to that. So I think some general tips for making your composite recordings. And the starting point is that if you're trying to get people to put in different tracks to come together, then it's really critical that they are working on the same tempo, and that they have some sort of guide that allows them to record tracks that will be reasonably easy to stitch together. So you need to provide them with some kind of platform track. And that can be anything really. It just needs to provide enough information for them to be able to play along with and record something that will be suitable. So it could be a piano accompaniment, or a guitar, or a bass line. Bass line's good because it keeps the tempo. Or just a click track, some audible signal that tells them exactly what speed to play at. So I'll tell you what my approach has been to doing this. And I use this program called GarageBand. And I start by, at the very beginning, setting up a click track that has the desired tempo. And in the case of the choir, for example, I'll do that in consultation with Arwin to see what speed we think is about right for that particular piece. Within GarageBand, you can change the tempo. So it doesn't need to be the same tempo all the way through. You can actually, as I'll show if you join my example session, you can actually vary the tempo either in steps, or you can vary it smoothly by making tempo curves, if you like, so that it gets slower slowly, or it gets faster slowly. So having set up the click track, then the next step would be to generate a kind of starter audio track for the players to play against. And just a click track is not ideal. It's better to provide something that really gives them a good guide for playing. And I'll generally do that by putting in a bass line or a piano part, or both. And I've been doing that myself. I've got a piano, so I can record that directly, and the piano can produce a bass sound, so I can record that. But there's a trick here which is worth knowing about, and I'm not sure that applies to all programs, but it certainly applies to GarageBand. You have an alternative to recording your track as an audio, directly from a microphone or some other kind of input. And it's called MIDI. Some of you may be familiar with MIDI. So there are two kinds of inputs that these programs, that this one can deal with. One is audio, so it's essentially a digitized version of the sound of your voice. So if you record yourself on your phone and then display it on one of these programs, you'll see it as a wave pattern that goes all the way through. But the other kind is called MIDI. And what MIDI is not the actual sound. It's a set of instructions that tells some software in your device, whether it be a computer or it might be a keyboard or something like that. It's a set of instructions that tells the software what to play. And it will have information about the volume, the attack, the way in which the note starts, the length, the pitch, etc. And the advantage of the set of instructions is that they're really flexible, because once those instructions are in your software program, then you can tell the software program to alter that information really easily. So you can tell it to, instead of playing those notes as a piano, you can tell them to play it as a clarinet or trumpet or drums or voice, because the instructions are then just being interpreted in a different way. And the other thing is you can change the way the information is dealt with really easily. So you could simply speed up a track or slow it down, and the instructions will tell the software to do that. And why that's really useful is that if you're setting up a platform track, then you can play them in on a MIDI instrument. So my piano, for example, has a MIDI output, and that can go directly into the computer. And you then, I mean, sounds a cheat, but you can take a piece of music, say a jazz bass line, and just play in quite slowly the bass line according to whatever speed you can manage, and then simply speed it up to the speed that you want. And if you've got some complicated keyboard bit, and some of the keyboard parts we've been dealing with are quite complicated, it's really useful to be able to play it in really slowly and then speed it up, and then you end up with your platform track without having to spend hours practicing the part. There is a disadvantage in that the actual sound you get out of that is not as good. It sounds quite metronomic and a bit wooden, and so an acoustic instrument will all be better. But if you're starting from scratch, then it's a really useful way to go, I've found anyway. So making the platform track for everybody to play against involves getting a tempo right, and then laying down whatever instruments you feel you need to provide that. And then having done that within the GarageBand program, or whatever you're using, Audacity or whatever, then you can save it as an audio file and then simply send it to the performers and ask that they record while listening to their contribution, and then send it back to you. So a few tips that I found useful in doing that. One is to put into the platform track a 4-bar introduction with clicks, so that when people are getting ready to play, they know what's coming. They know what the tempo is going to be. You need to tell them that there's a 4-bar introduction. And then the other thing is that we've hit on the idea, it's not new, but you ask all the performers to clap at a particular point along the way. So they're recording what they're doing, they're listening to the introduction, and then we ask them at the first beat of the 3rd bar of the introduction to make a clap. So that will create an audible signal, which then marks the start of their recording, and allows, when it comes to mixing, it allows them all to be aligned. And if you don't do that, I mean, you can work without that, but if you don't do it, it does make life a lot a lot harder. The other thing is if it's a vocal piece, then you might need to put in tuning notes at the beginning. So if it's, for example, an a cappella choir, then they have to have some way of knowing which note to start off. So I usually, if it's the choir, will include some tuning notes at the beginning. And again, you can do that with MIDI. So you just, I forgot to say with MIDI, by the way, that you've got the option of playing an instrument, a MIDI instrument, into your program to generate the notes. But you can do it within the program itself with no musical instrument. You can simply, click on a particular note in a kind of digital keyboard, and it will generate the right sound for you. So if you do that, this is the easiest way. You put in tuning notes for all the parts you want.
Sorry
and
to
the
interrupt.
other final point is that if you do use it, I've touched on this, if you've used MIDI to create instruments in your platform track, you may want to replace that. You probably will want to replace that with the real thing. But once you've got the platform track and everybody plays against, you've got a piano track, you send it to the real pianist and then they can send you back something that will fit. Sorry, did I interrupt somebody there? Did somebody
No,
want...
I was just going to say, it was only a small point, that the MIDI thing is why I like using Soundtrap. I should have, that was when you said it before, because I don't think, I might be wrong, I don't think you can put in MIDI on Audacity, whereas
You can, but
You can.
Can you?
Yes.
Do you need an extra device, or can you
No.
just do
you just need, like, you can import MIDI. Yeah.
Oh, you can input, okay, but can you create it?
Yes, you can do both.
Can you? Okay, well, I've learned something new. Thank you. That's useful.
Okay, so that's making the platform track. You've now distributed it, and then there are some points about how the performers should be asked to make their recordings. And they'll need two devices, one to listen to the platform track that you've provided, and a different device to make their recording. I mean, maybe there's a way of doing it with one device, but it's complicated, and we've asked people to use two. And the second point is that they must listen to the platform track through headphones, so that when they make their recording with their phone or whatever, then all the phone picks up is what they're playing and doesn't pick up the background track that they're playing with. And actually, that's sometimes a bit of a challenge because some people's headphones are open, and so you can hear, you can hear the background track in the background. Sometimes people forget altogether, and that's hopeless. But even if there's a bit of the platform track in the background, particularly in quiet passages where you really want to be clean, that can come through. So you should persuade them to use the best headphones they can for that, and not to have their platform track too loudly playing. Another tip is that if they're playing against a platform track, they should download it first. When we first started doing this, one or two people were streaming the track because we put it out on Dropbox, and so they would click on the link from Dropbox and listen to it. But actually, the timing can be slightly off depending on their computer connection and latency and all these things. So actually, the timing of the tracks that they produced was not quite right. So they should download the track that you provide to their device and then play it. Another thing that we found is that the volume of people's recordings is very different. And if they're really weedy, if somebody has produced a track that you can barely see the wave pattern, then it's really difficult to mix them. But more than that, it's really difficult to balance them with tracks that have come in at a much louder volume. They can't cope. So you should ask people to experiment with making their recordings so they get a reasonably loud signal. So you should ask them to make a recording and then send it to you, and then you can have a look and see if the wave pattern is sufficiently strong that it's decent mixing. I made the point already about clapping at the appropriate point so that they can align the tracks, and also it really helps if you're doing lots that they label the tracks properly. I mean, we've had all sorts of new recording comes in, lots of new recordings. So you have to listen to them and try and figure out what instrument it is, who is playing it, and it's not very easy. So that's all the general stuff that I had thought might be useful. I will talk about a real example, which is the one that we are doing at the moment for the virtual choir, along with Ellie and Arwen. So I think I'll stop rabbiting on there, and then we can have maybe a general discussion and then breakout rooms, or other people may want to put in general comments as well.
Is there a recommended volume for recording your track? Is there a figure, for example, a decibel level or something like that?
That's a good point, Matthew. I'm sure there is, but I've never investigated that. I suppose partly because I think, to be honest, most people are not very familiar with the whole business of recording. And so it's never seemed terribly useful to tell people how many decibels. It was better just to say, have a go and send something in, and we'll tell you if it's okay.
Yeah, the problem is it's determined by the device. Some phones will take louder sounds than others. Some have automatic volume control, and one thing you didn't say, Stephen, it should turn off automatic volume control on the device when you're doing these recordings, because otherwise it will just compress everything. But at the professional level, there's a level called +4 dBu, which is the recommended level, and that gives enough headroom before it starts to distort. I've had recordings to deal with which have been recorded so loud that the tops of the waveforms are just squared off, and you can't deal with those. You have to send them back and say redo them. And equally when they're too quiet, all you get is noise really when you wind them up. So there's a level in between where if you can see it around about half full screen when it's transferred to Audacity, then that's about right.
I think it's worth putting in from the layman's perspective, because I'm not too bad at music, but I'm no expert at all of this, and Stephen will put me right if I say complete nonsense. That I use my phone to record and my iPad. I've never done anything with the volume controls, and I use a pair of plastic red headphones that I gave my son for his birthday 3 years ago. So you really, take with a little pinch of salt the recommendations for the equipment and the settings. Oh, are you still there? No, I've gone, haven't I?
No, you're there.
You're still there.
Oh,
You're still there.
my screen just went black. I think it's because the cat's sitting on the computer. So yeah.
Black cat.
Certain things might make it better, but don't rush out and buy lots of stuff until you've tried what you've got first.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good point. I mean, when I started this, I had a go with 2 or 3 musical friends, and it worked quite well. So I thought, well, this doesn't look that complicated. Then going out to a bunch of 20 people with very little technical knowledge about any of this, I really hadn't much confidence that it would work. But actually, remarkably, people were able to get on top of the technology. I mean, these are, and these are not whizzy technology freaks at all. They are grandmothers who've never done anything like this before, and people who really were quite frightened of the technology initially, but actually they've coped remarkably well. And we've done loads of stuff over the last few months. So the barrier to entry is not high.
I think the biggest thing for people, if you're collecting in tracks from other people, the biggest thing is getting your head around the fact that you do need 2 pieces of equipment, and the idea of a click track. I know when I sent Will's mum the flute pieces to record. He, you know, the fact that he'd done some of it himself was invaluable, because, you know, she was like, oh, you know, what's all this metronome business? And it's so crucial. And having done it with the kids at school as well, you get kids just sending you a recording of themselves playing, and they don't get that it just won't work. You've all got to be playing at exactly the same tempo. And if you're recording yourself, like I know one or two of you want to do, you've got to play each of your tracks at exactly the same tempo. Otherwise, you just won't be able to mix at all.
One thing about that, you don't need two pieces of equipment if you've got an audio interface. It acts as both. So you can put a microphone in and plug in headphones. And the other thing is that you can use this sort of thing, which is just it's an MP3 recorder. That's what I used to record that Winband on, and plug professional microphones into that, or any other sort of microphone. So this sort of thing will work quite well for recording. But if you've got an audio interface, then you can plug headphones into that and also your microphone, and it has independent input and output. So you don't need more than that.
Yes, and I confess, Peter, that once I started doing this, I decided that it was worth the investment of an audio interface, and it's been terrific actually. It's got 4 inputs, so you can have MIDI going in and you can have audio going in at the same time.
Stephen, what do you use? Sorry.
It's a Focusrite Scarlett, isn't it?
Focusrite Scarlett audio interface. I mean, they're not cheap, but I figured out, since I was saving all this money by not going out and enjoying myself over the last month, I would treat myself. You can get numbers of inputs.
There are 4 models in the Scarlett range, so you choose one of the lower end ones.
Okay.
4 inputs is probably as much as you need for this sort of work.
Can you just can somebody just put the name of that in the chat, just so I can make a note?
It's there. It's there, Arwin, on the slides.
I can't see the slides now, though.
Ah.
And I thought I might type 1 or 2 things up following this.
It was on one of Stephen's earlier slides.
I saw it, yes, and it's got 2 T's. I remember that.
If you just give me a second, I will post the Amazon link.
Oh, lovely. Thanks, Stephen. Thanks, Martin.
I can probably, if I tipped my screen around, I can show you what it looks like. I need to share screen again. Where are we?
You're there.
On the bottom, yes.
Yeah.
Actually, no, I can't do this, can I?
No, you don't need to share screen. You just lift it up and show us.
Oh. 2 hands. There we are. Focusrite Scarlett. Little box there.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Nearly lost his Mac in the process.
And Stephen, that connects to your computer through USB?
USB.
Yeah. Some of the more expensive ones used to connect through FireWire, which is now pretty well obsolete. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very good actually, and you know, the ability to put in MIDI is a big advantage, but also to record piano and vocal or any other instrument at the same time is an advantage. Not that there's much opportunity to play in concert with other people at the moment. Anyway.
I was about to say, I just pictured you there, you know, playing the piano tracks and singing your stuff in at the same time. It's like, I don't think I can do that.
One of I borrowed one of those and I've played with it for a while. One of the other things that it does, if you have a high-end microphone, is it does also provide phantom power, because some of these mics you need phantom power, and it provides that. So you can use a better microphone.
Okay, now do we want to listen to Will, or is your stuff very sort of PC focused? Do we want to
yeah,
go into
to be fair,
breakout room?
anything I'd be saying would just very much be focused on people running Windows, not in general.
Okay. Mac, you had a question.
Sorry, just a very elementary question. This approach presumably is preferable to layering different instruments. What you described, everyone does their own piece individually and then it all gets mixed together, as opposed to, say, putting down the drums and then adding the bass and then everyone else adds sequentially to that. Is that...
Well, absolutely a good point. And actually, the way we do the tracks is that we do a bit of both. So we will layer to get the basic platform track. So for the jazz band, generally speaking, I'll send out a click track MIDI version of bass and piano, and I'll send that out to the rhythm section.
Yeah.
So then Ed will lay down a drum track, Andy will lay down a bass track. Usually Andy will be first on bass, and then Ed will do his drums on top of that. Jane will then do her piano on top of that. It depends on the piece, really, to what extent layering makes sense. But of course, it takes time because you're doing everything in series. And so when it comes to getting everybody to participate, with 20 something, I think 25 singers, then you can't do that. You've just got to get everybody to then come in with their stuff and mix it. And we do the same with the choir. So usually Arwen and I and Ellie will do our bit, generally speaking, layering them. I like to wait until the proper musicians have done their bit before coming in, and then that goes out as the what we call the final performance platform track, the FPPT.
Yeah.
You need a good acronym.
Right. Okay. So shall I set out some breakout rooms now?
Just please explain what's going on in each breakout room and why they are different.
Because if you've got a Mac, as Stephen and Martin, I believe, have, you will be using one set of software. And if you have a PC, you'll be using a different set of software.
Well, that's just two breakout rooms, a PC one and a Mac one.
Yeah.
Fine. Thank you.
Martin.
Yeah, will you be covering, because the thing I really want to learn is how to put the video together, so you can see. That's what I really want to do.
Yeah.
Well, me and probably more Catherine than me can probably.
Well, in that case, I think we probably don't need a Mac breakout room at all, because I'd be quite keen to learn how to do the video too.
Well, shall we hand over to Will and Catherine and see what they've got to say, and then Stephen and Martin, if you want to go off at all, then you can do. Well, you could always Zoom at another time, I suppose, if you wanted to talk about the audio mixing side of things. But
I think I can do that. It's the video I can't do.
Yeah. Okay. So do we want?
Please don't do video in parallel with audio, because then we can only watch one or t'other.
No, I'm not going to. No.
Will, do you want to do your bit about using Audacity? Because at first maybe, and then I could do the video.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just...
Would that make most sense?
Yes.
Is that all right with you?
Yeah, that sounds great. Okay. Right, I'll... Can you see that now, everyone?
Yep.
Don't understand it, but can see it.
Right, so this is what Audacity looks like. I haven't seen it before. So here I've just loaded up so that we can take a look at kind of how things work. This is what the project file looks like for the Take Your Time jazz band recording Arwen played earlier. So I think that Audacity, it might look a bit overwhelming at the moment with just all the tracks, but overall it's not too difficult of a software to use. So like all you have, so here at the top, I've taken Stephen's FPPT platform track that was kindly provided, and all you have to do really is take the audio recordings that you've had sent in, and you can import them using the file menu. Import some audio, and when you have files in, oh, sorry. I'm going to disable that. When you have your files in, you can drag them in. And if you've got people to clap, which I think Steve was sent ones that you have on the backing track, and that's very simple to do. So all you do, you can zoom in very easily and quite to very fine detail. And so say, you know,
Will, how do you zoom in? How do you zoom in?
So if you have a mouse, you can use the scroll wheel. So if you use the scroll wheel normally, it goes up and down. But if you hold the control key on the keyboard, it zooms in and out. It's all very, yeah, I think, sorry, yeah, I probably should have mentioned that earlier, but yes, you've got, so if you don't have a mouse, I think you can kind of use the trackpad. It's a little more difficult to use, but if you kind of, you know, your touchscreen device kind of pull apart with 2 fingers, it works similarly for zooming in and out. But if you have a mouse to be using with this, I'd highly recommend that because it makes things a lot easier. So yeah,
the plus and minus.
Anyway, when you have your track, yes, probably. Yeah, thank you. Sorry, yeah, I almost completely forget about some of the buttons, but yes, you can also do that with the little buttons. So anyway, all that you really need to do is find, say, the start of the track. So here we've got the start of this track, or well, at the beginning you would find the clap people have put in, and you can just drag the mouse from their clap or the start of their playing to where it starts on your backing track. And so if they are kind of starting behind, which is almost always what will happen, you just drag it to there, and either you press the little scissors button up there or just the delete key on your keyboard, and that moves the start of their audio back to where you need to sync it. And I'll just undo that. Or in the case that people have kind of started earlier than your track, once again, you can just drag them out or drag from the start of their audio backwards to where the other thing starts, wherever that is. You can either, there is probably a copy button up there. Oh yeah, there you go. Either the copy button or just the keyboard shortcut, which is Control and C. And then you can kind of add that area. Basically, we're just pushing them back a little bit like that. So now that's starting earlier, but then you'd also hear the kind of start doubled. So, and this tool that's generally incredibly useful to use, there is a silence audio, which that now means now starting further back. And so you can do that for all your tracks, so they're all starting at the same point. And then if needs be, you can once again go back, kind of go along through the piece and line them up at each entry. So say here we've lined up all the trumpet parts of the second entry using the exact same process, just kind of dragging from the start of their audio to where the other parts are starting. Or like as Stephen and Catherine were saying, very much recommended to have a click track. So it's very easy to do in Audacity. You can generate your own click tracks using this lovely little menu, and you can use that to help you sync things up. So say if I think it's already at the preset I used for the one with this one, I generate it at the correct beats per minute. You give it a second to run, and you can see that now we've got the beats. I think I've lined that up incorrectly, but you can use that to align things throughout the piece as well, if you want to. I've kind of gone through that very quickly, but that is the basics of it. And there is, at least what I found, very little, not very much more to it. The only other thing that's good to use is the amplify effect. So say once you're done with kind of lining all the tracks up using the dragging, deleting and copying and silencing, you can select your whole track or an area of the track that you want to make louder or quieter. Say here, maybe the trumpets are coming out a little too much compared to the other instruments. And all you can do, you can use the amplify tool to either make them quieter by feeding in a negative amount or bring them out slightly more by feeding in a positive number there. And that will allow you to make proper leveling of the piece overall. To say, like in this one, most of the tracks came in at an all right pitch, volume, but the tenor solo, you can probably see that overall that was a little quiet. So I've just amplified the tenor part at this section so that you can hear the solo come out over the rest of the instruments. Is there any questions on that? Or sorry, not my forte teaching, but hopefully people have followed that all right.
I think basically there's no substitute for actually just trying it out. I mean, I had a little go at Audacity in December and struggled a lot with it. But
yes.
I'm not a natural at this sort of thing at all. But there are, you know, there's various videos on YouTube for certain things. I mean, I had trouble even importing, and I wasn't operating anything like that number of tracks. And that all looks beautifully lined up. I mean, how much work went into that? Because
yeah,
how long would that take?
Yeah, I will admit, I don't know how much easier it is in Garage. Like it does take quite a while. Like I spent probably 2 hours maybe just putting all these tracks together. Like yeah, it's there are I think Audacity, it works very well, get a good result, but you do definitely require to put in quite a bit of work in the middle.
Excuse me if this is a very ignorant question. You've already laid down the click track for everybody to follow when they're playing their instruments or singing their part.
Yeah.
What was the purpose of you going to that tempo section earlier? What was it you were achieving with that?
So having your click track or the kind of backing track up here, it's very useful because like you can see here at the beginning of the click track or backing track, you've got where kind of, so I've muted the claps at the beginning for the final mixing, but say there was a clap back here and people will have when you're sending out your instructions for recording, you'll ask people to clap along with the backing track. So once again, yeah, I've muted those for the final mix, but earlier on you might have seen kind of one person clapping there, one person clapping there, etc. And so since you have the backing track imported in your project, you've kind of got one example clap to line it all up to, so that every part starts at the same point.
Okay, so that's your reference.
That kind of makes sense.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And if you're interested, I can show you just what the GarageBand interface is, but you know, maybe that's not worth it if nobody has the capacity to use GarageBand. I mean, generally, I've had a little bit of a dabble with Audacity. I would say, as a true Mac man, that the Apple interface is quite intuitive, and you can do an awful lot by just dragging. You know, if you want to align tracks, you can just drag them from side to side. If you want to import tracks, you can just drag them from a folder into the interface.
Yes, sorry.
It's.
I should have mentioned that. You can equally.
You can do that.
I would agree though with Stephen that maybe and asking like some
simulate. Sorry, yeah, I've kind of said that you have to.
Oh, sorry. Well, you go first.
No.
No, sorry. Well, I was just going to say that equally, if you do have all your files in one folder, you can kind of drag and drop them into Audacity as well. But, sorry. Yeah.
I was going to say, I think probably when we talked about Soundtrap, it's probably quite a halfway house between the two. And if you find, if they're importing and the copy and pasting is, that's the bit that I find hard in GarageBand, maybe just because I'm not very patient. So I find Soundtrap easier for that. So that might be worth, if you're thinking, if you get stuck, it might be worth trying it there. It's a bit more like GarageBand that you can drag.
Don't forget, Audacity will work on Macs as well.
It will.
Yes.
But not vice versa.
No, GarageBand won't work on Windows, no.
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 Or Logic, but Audacity
Okay.
will run on a number of platforms.
So, Catherine, do you want to do a quick show of what Soundtrap
Yeah.
looks like, just in case people are interested? Because I seem to remember that was fairly straightforward, and then we'll move on to the creating of the video, which is, I think, what certainly some people are here for today.
Yeah, so when I made my backing track from a video, I don't know if you can see, you should be able to see my screen now.
Yeah.
This is what Soundtrap looks like. So Stephen, you'd probably, I mean, it's obviously more simple than GarageBand, but it's good because you can literally just drag the tracks around. So if you want to line them up, I just zoom in, just like Will said with his mouse, and then I can make them just literally by moving my mouse, which is how I find I use GarageBand at work. It's very similar. You've got similarly like volume controls here on the left hand side. And when you add a new track, you can just drag it in like that, and it's just there. So it's useful. Like you can also do that on Audacity, but the thing that you don't have in this free version, so for instance, if I wanted to change the volume of the track, it'll tell me I only get one track that I can edit in that way. So you can only have a sort of general, like this track is quiet and this one is louder. You can't have subtle changes, and the same things like reverb. You can't do subtle changes of reverb on one track in the free version. But in terms of if you just want to do something basic and straightforward, it makes a nice nice mix. And is you know, I'm no expert in sound mixing, but it does a basic job well.
Catherine, did you say that once you'd done it in this particular piece of software, you then move it to Audacity for different reasons?
Yes, I do at the moment, because I didn't used to, because I used to have the version where you could do more, but you can just save and then download it and it appears as an MP3. And then it would be better. The other thing you can't do in the free version is you can't download it as a WAV file, which would give you more scope to play with it. So you have to download it as an MP3. But then I normally do things like experiment with compressing the sound and adding some reverb and changing the sometimes like little things like adding a fade in and fade out and things that I do on Audacity to sort of try and round it off a bit better.
Catherine, can I ask, if you do that, you save it and you download it and you put it into Audacity as an MP3, does that appear as a single file, or does it retain?
Yes.
Right, okay.
Which is annoying. Now you use, again, I have exported them all. You can export them all as different files, but then as MIDI, which if they are MIDI, and I think you may, again, if you paid for it, you might be able to export them separately, but not lined up separately. So you can export them if you've, say, messed around with them a bit, and so you've added some reverb to one track or a fade into or whatever, but you can't export them lined up to Audacity, as far as I'm aware, unless they're become one compressed track.
Okay.
As in compressed as in all together.
So the point of putting it in Audacity is to manipulate the overall sound of the file, not the individual tracks. Okay, okay.
But that might be like, some people might be listening in horror and say that's not what you should be doing at all. But that's just how I've found it to try and make it a little bit better with what I've got, which is quite limited.
Yeah, okay, okay.
Shall I show you about videos?
Come on, we're all desperate to hear about videos.
Right. Now, as I've said before, I'm not really any expert. I learned this very much through teaching myself. A colleague at another school, I'm a teacher, if you don't know, recommended it, and I think it's fairly user-friendly. So I'll talk you through what I thought might be best was if I actually demonstrated what you have to do, and I won't make an entire video, but the idea of what I would do, and then I've sort of done some tips, but I'm conscious of time because it's already 12:30, so I'll not keep you long. But feel free to ask me questions because it might seem a bit quick. So this is the program that I use. It's called VideoPad. You should see it in a second. Hopefully you can see it now on your screen.
Yeah.
And yeah, I did pay for it. You can download it for free and try it, but you can only export one video. And from experience, when I'm making a video, I normally end up exporting it a couple of times. So really, I would recommend paying for it. It's not very expensive. It's something like £9 for 4 months or something. It's an Australian website. So I had to, you have to pay in Australian dollars. But other than that, I mean, it seems quite straightforward. So it's not very expensive. And I found it with paying that much, you can do everything that you might want to do. So what I'd start off with first of all is making sure I had all my files really organized, because the computer reads from that folder each time, so it doesn't save them in VideoPad. You can save a project file, but it still seems to want to, from my experience, feed from there. So like have a folder which is all my videos for this project. And then you can see in the top left here, it says add files. So you can either drag or drop or just add files. And I made you a little demonstration this morning, thought that would be easiest. So here are my files. And what I've already done is I've already made a backing track. So I would recommend, when I say a backing track, if you're doing a video project, mix the audio first. So have already decided on your final audio track. I don't mix audio and video in the same project because I personally feel that's difficult, because you're fiddling around with the video. You want to have the audio set up as you want it and then match the videos back to it, is my preferred way. You might have a different preferred way. If you use apps like Acapella and things, you obviously do both at the same time, but this is how I've found it has been okay, even with hundreds of, like I have actually had like 120 tracks in here and it's been fine. So, or around that number, like a good number. So what I've done is I've added in my video files. You can add them in one by one. So if someone sends one in late, or you can add them in later. And I've added in my backing track to the audio files. The images, so say for example, if anyone watched the jazz band video, obviously some people know they had like at the beginning a title page. I've made an image for that in PowerPoint or some other program, or take a photo. If you want to put pictures in, you can do. So I've used this previously. If I've had something which is audio and the person didn't want me to use their video, I've put in a picture of them or something instead.
Sorry, Catherine, you've got two instruments there, have you? There's two.
I think that's just a more detailed viewer, I think, as opposed to, I think it's the same track, it's just a more detailed view. This is where I'm not very technical, so you might find, I mean, I can use tech, but I'm not, my understanding maybe isn't great, so if someone points me out, then let me know. So weirdly, the thing I found you have to do first, let me get this right, is put in, is either, and I will do this the wrong way, is you either have to put in the video first or your backing track. I think you have to have one video in first. I can't remember why that is. So I've put in one video, there it is. And I've literally just dragged it down to video track 1. You might want to rename it. I'm not going to now. And then I must put in my backing track, and I just drag that below so it's there. And you can drag it around and move it. And at the moment, it doesn't matter too much if I'm moving the backing track. So I'm going to put it near the beginning. Just because I haven't got an introduction on this, I'm not going to put it at the very beginning, but you want to make sure your backing track is in a place you're happy with, because that's what you're going to pin all the videos to. If you, and I have done this before, I've made it and I thought, oh goodness me, I've got like 10 seconds of rubbish, like blank at the beginning, you can then export the video, import it and cut that out. And I have done that before. So it's not the end of the world, it is salvageable if you leave space you don't want.
Is that a stereo audio track? It's shown as mono, but
I think it
has it compressed to mono.
As in, I think I exported it from Audacity. When I made it in Audacity, I think I exported it as a stereo track. I think. Is that what you mean?
Well, it's only showing one
yes.
track there.
Yes. So it's probably then has it compressed it to mono? Is that what you?
Combined it, yeah.
Yeah.
To mono.
Yeah,
Yes.
I would
So that
imagine.
it will retain into stereo in the
Yes.
in the program.
Yes,
when
I
it's
would
played.
think so when it's played.
Okay.
So the way in which and you'll probably see me move my head close to the computer, so I'm sorry because I need to see. The way in which you then line them up is you need your backing track really zoomed in so you can see. And I know that my playing here in this video starts at the beginning of the backing track. So I know that what I've played should start here. So I need to cut my video or at least move it so it starts there. Now I could, because it's my first video, just move the backing track so that they're in line. I tend to work with the sound waves because I find that the easiest way to just be pretty accurate. So you can now see that that looks in line. Now I feel that looks okay. It looks like they're matching up. So if I click off it, that's probably clearer for you. You can see. So now if I was to play it, you hopefully should be able to hear the two. Now, the reason I say I work the sound waves is because my computer's actually quite rubbish and it doesn't necessarily always play out loud when I press play now. So I have to have made sure I've lined up the waves first, and I can't just do it by listening. Now that seems okay to me. It seems to have lined up, so I'm happy with that. What I would then do is unlink the video and the audio because I'm happy with my final backing track. I'm not actually very happy, but normally I would be happy with it. And I don't want all these extra audio tracks layered on top of it again. So I want to get rid of the sound from the video. So how I do that is I press, I'm just going to move you to the side. I press unlink from video, and then I can delete my audio track and it goes. So now I've just got the backing track and a silent video, but I know it's in time. That's why somebody from Jazz Band suggested that everyone might mime and send me silent videos. And that I think that's very difficult to work with, particularly if you haven't got a computer that is at the right sort of speed. As mine is not very powerful. So I needed the sound waves to help. So once I've done that, then it's really just the same process of adding the other tracks. So add this one, and you can see again it's in the wrong place, so I can just move it, keep moving it until I think it's right, zoom it out, just check I'm really happy. I find one thing you can do, I think that just moved itself, might have done. Just check. One thing I've recommended on my notes is saving very frequently, because if you've accidentally moved the backing track and then everything is out of sync, you'll really kick yourself. So I tend to save very frequently. One thing you can do if you've got too much at the beginning is you can just cut the track. You just press, I think it's E on my keyboard. I thought it was E. No, maybe it's L. I always get confused. Yeah, L on your keyboard. And then you can just delete parts so that it's not there. That can be quite helpful. Hopefully it doesn't all jump in the process. And if you hold down Shift, it unlocks it so you can join them together more neatly. I find that checking the ending is always good. Is it in time at the end?
Yeah.
And then and presuming I know that these are in time because I did them myself. And also you'll know if they're in time because you've mixed the audio before. So if you have somebody who wasn't in time for the audio, then you know to pay particular attention to their video. When I've done things for work in the past, I've had people who literally I really know I can only include in the video for about 3 seconds because otherwise they're just going to look really silly. Or I've got to include them in, you know, like if they're playing the piano and not show their hands or something like that, so that you can be sure that they're going to be in time. So you get the idea. I've put 2 tracks in there, so I will go on to how I would do the split screen part. Does anyone have any questions or while I'm just deleting this video?
I have to say I am a little bit confused about the whole lining up process, because it just seems like you've got loads and loads of pictures and I'm not sure what you're lining up to what, but that again that might just be me, and I might just need
I will explain it again because it might be. So this track, when you drag in a video, so I'll just drag one in and show you and then I'll delete it. If I drag in me playing the keyboard, So if I was to watch it again, this is me playing the tune on the keyboard at the top. So it's a video file.
Yeah.
So if it might start playing in a minute. If I drag it in here to the top and the video tracks, then it separates me playing the keyboard, so the video part and the audio part. So it puts both in. And they are.
So is video track 3 the same as audio track 3?
No, it's actually the same as audio track 4 because I've started to delete them. That's where it gets a bit.
Oh, I see. Okay. Okay.
But,
yeah.
But I think it's helpful at the big. Touching my screen. That's no good. At the beginning, that you can see if I move this track, that the audio moves with it. Can you see?
Okay. Oh, yes. Yes, I can see. Yeah.
So that helps. And so they're linked. So the reason I keep deleting the audio when I've put in the video is because otherwise I'm going to have layering of too many layers of audio that I don't need because I've already put them in my mastered audio track.
Okay.
Can I ask, when you've mixed the audio first, so you have your finished audio track. The audio that's in there, is that the audio that relates to what we're actually seeing as a video file?
Yes.
So you have recorded yourself playing the cello, and then you've taken that audio and you have recorded the keyboard and done that. Okay.
Yes. So
in theory, what you could have done is you could have mixed all the audio, and then you could have actually just pretended to play in time with the audio, not recorded.
Yes, apart from then my video would have no sound waves.
Yeah.
And so when I'm matching them up, because I find that you really have to rely on matching the sound waves.
Okay.
Then I would have it would probably be, it would pick up not enough to be able, or if I'm silent, nothing. And so I wouldn't be able to match it with the backing track, and therefore the video might not be in time.
Right.
Because what I find sometimes, and it might not do this now because actually my computer's been recently refurbished, but what it can do is when I play this at the top here, this is like the preview window where you can see me at the moment without my head. But it can be very lagging there. So you can't be sure that it is in time by watching that. Now, I don't know, I mean, my computer isn't old, and it's one that I've got from work, so it's not, it's not really poor. I don't know whether if you had a more powerful computer, you might find that it plays beautifully in the video bit at the top, but I mean, this has got loads of storage. It should be it's perfectly adequate for everything else, but I do find when I'm doing this, I have to rely on lining up the sounds, because otherwise the videos, I can't be sure that they're playing in time till I've exported it.
Catherine, can I just ask a question? Yes. If you're worried about things becoming misaligned during the mixing process, is there a way of locking the true backing track to the videos as you go, so you can't inadvertently mess that up, that timing?
Now, I have to be honest, I've never tried it, but I wonder if by doing group, it may do that. Does it? Yeah, it does. Look. So you've made me think of something there that I hadn't. To be honest, I haven't found that it does. As long as I'm careful, I haven't had that problem. It's very rare that I've had that problem. But yes, you can group them together. So these, I'm pretty sure, are now all in time. So they're now grouped.
And just a supplementary, do you hang on to the original video track to the last minute, so you've always got something to refer back to, or do you get rid of them as you go?
Do you mean the ones which say video files in the top left here?
Well, I meant the audio track that that was originally attached to the video.
I tend to get rid of them as I go, because otherwise, just from a practical point of view, I find that you can only bring this bit up so much that if I've had 70, then I've got too many, and I lose track of where the backing track is. Right. So you could label them all, and then you'd be sure of which, but I tend to just get rid of them as we go. And I haven't had too many issues as a result. I've had the occasional crisis, but it's been by and large been fine. That jumped back just out of, if anyone was wondering why, because there's nothing below this video. So I've deleted this bit because it was just surplus of just me doing nothing. and that's why it jumped back. You can then move everything forward if you wish, if you want the space. So I won't, I mean, I've got lots of tracks I could add in, but I won't add all 4, but I won't add all 4 now, because I think probably importing a track is quite straightforward. Or something like, to see me just do more probably isn't very helpful. But what I then do, if I wanted to create a sort of split screen effect, so you had both of me playing at once, because at the moment, if I exported this, the computer would add the sound, but it would just choose one of these two. It wouldn't know to have them on 2 windows. So what I would normally do is listen for a musical place in which to split it, because otherwise it wouldn't make much sense probably. Like when we watch videos in the coffee concert, people have thought quite carefully about which section to split and so on. But I'm just going to guess for now, and I'm going to choose here. Then what you do is you split. You can either use the scissors function, which comes up, or just press L on the keyboard and it splits everything like that. So these are now, this track is now split. If you wanted to, you could split individual tracks. I can't off the top of my head think of why you might do it, but there might be a reason. You can just hold down Control and do that. But because I've grouped these, they're working together now. In order to add the split screen, it's really simple. And having researched some other programs before someone recommended this to me, I was like, oh, this is easy in comparison. What's good about the split screen is it's built in. So if I choose FX here, just on the track, so you can see a little FX, add new effect. This is where you're now going to think that really making one of these is not as difficult as you thought. Press a split screen. You can choose all sorts of effects. So for example, sometimes at the beginning of the video, I've had a fade in, or if I've had things with different images and I've wanted them to sort of slowly transition between them rather than just flash, then you can have nice things like, I've got you on one side of my screen. You can add things like a blur or a filter, all sorts of things, artistic effects, creative overlay, you can have snow, all that, but we won't do that now. But the split screen, I think, is what people probably want to know about. So split screen, press OK. And then it literally, you choose how many people you want to have in this particular section. So the most you can have on this program is 25, which is a bit of a nuisance. So when I've done bigger videos, I've had to have, you know, if I want everyone on the screen at once, that's not possible. What I've from other video editing programs, there's a Mac one which just has escaped, Final Cut Pro, I think it's called, that you can use on Mac. I think from what I understand, I could be wrong, I think you have to draw in the sections that you require, whereas this actually just puts the videos into boxes for you. So for instance, here I've got 2 of me, so I could choose horizontal 2 and it would put me on the left or the right, depending on which I wanted. And then I could put the other one of me on the right. So here I've chosen, this is talking about my ukulele video, it tells me, I've put me on the left. And then if I then close that, you can actually put it to different clips by using this function here, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to close it, put me on the cello on the right. And then if I preview this particular sequence, you can see both of me there. And if I play, because there's only 2 of me, I think this should just play, but it may not. Now, I didn't share my system sound. I realized that might also not help. But in terms of, you can see there's 2 of me there with very little effort. If you had, I mean, I say, but obviously it does get more complicated, but the initial process is simple. If I had 25.
Is it just me? I've lost your volume, Catherine. Sorry.
Have you? Has everyone else?
Hear you.
You've gone quiet, Catherine. I think it's the volume from the program versus the volume from your microphone where you're speaking.
Didn't share.
That's better.
Yeah.
That's better. You're
Okay,
back.
I didn't share I realized I hadn't pressed share system sound, so that was why. Sorry. I'll do that now, and then if I have to play anything else. So say if I had 25 clips, then it would be exactly the same principle. You just allocate them to, you know, a letter, and then you become a much smaller part of the screen, and you can see it in just being previewed here, just at the top, hopefully in the middle.
Yep.
So it isn't, I don't think it's, you know, I wouldn't say I was a tech expert. I mean, I feel quite confident on a computer, but it's not really difficult. It's more intuitive once you get into it. And then where I'd split it, I can then choose a new effect for this next one. So I could make it different. In this first example, you'll see that where I'd only had 2 of me and no more clips, the rest of the screen is black. And that's just like a preset. You could put in something else to be the background if you wanted to. I haven't experimented with that too much, but you can. Then these next sections, obviously, again, I would choose a different effect or the same one. You could have the same effect for the whole piece if you wanted to. There's no, you know, it depends on whether you want to have changes in scene. And if I just add that quickly.
Hello.
Go on. Yes, sorry.
Hello.
I think Peter might be answering the phone.
Okay. If you want to add a different effect for a different section, you can do, and then you can experiment a little bit more with things like transitioning between them using this effect here. So rather than it just simply going, at the moment, I think if I play this, you can see that the change was very sudden. You can add a gradual effect and so on if you want to. When you've finished it, obviously I'm not going to finish it now, but you can see that you could, with something straightforward, with only a few clips, if you've ordered them yourself and you are happy with how they work, then it shouldn't actually take too long. A bigger video obviously does take longer. When you're happy with it, you know, you might want to decide how it's going to end, whether you want everyone to end sort of gradually. So in which case you might sort of chop and change the ends a bit so people cut off at different times. Or whether you want to just stop it there and then, and it will export to the end of the black clip here. So you don't want loads of gap on your audio. You know, you want to make sure that that's, I won't, because I've linked them all now, I can't edit the audio, but you want to make sure that there's not a huge gap at the end, because it will keep doing that. You know, you could add in pictures at the end, or thank you very much, and you know, you've exported people's names or those things. When you go to export, it's very straightforward. You just press export at the top, choose the sort of video file that you want. And something that I'll just show you in a second, my screen of tips, something I would really recommend. This is the sort of standard format, which is suitable for things like YouTube. It does tell you, if I just, what it normally does. I haven't used this for a little while. I looked it up. I'm pretty sure that this is the format for YouTube, and I tend to export mine in what would be suitable for YouTube in case they need to do that. But what I often do for my first export is choose very low resolution so that I can still see the clips working, and it will export quickly, and I can check if there are any problems, because it can take, you know, an hour. I think when I exported the jazz band video, it took probably about an hour and a half to export. And so I wouldn't, I know you can just leave it while you're doing other things, but what I didn't want to do was get to the end and then find, I think I did do it twice, because the first time I found out that I'd, you know, missed out, I'd misaligned the clips at some point. In terms of when you're doing lots of split screen sections, it can be hard not to accidentally put 2 people allocating to A or something like that, and then they sort of mirror over each other. It's not very good. So I normally do a low resolution export, first of all, which you can see is going to be a very small file. As opposed to if I was going to do a higher resolution, you know, if I'd chosen, I don't know, 4K, you can see it's going to be a huge file. And so it takes much longer to export. And I might still want to do that later on, but only when I'm sure that I've got all my lining up correctly. Obviously, don't be disappointed if you export it in low resolution. It will be very blurry. You probably don't want to share it with anyone, but it tells you, you know, whether it's exported. Before I'll show you my tips very quickly, and I'm sorry if I've rambled on a bit, but does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, the version I've just opened the App Store, and the version that you've got isn't the professional version, right? It's the,
I think it's the home one. Now, again, Martin, I don't know how much it costs for the Mac, or whether that might be different. I downloaded it from their website direct because I'm on PC. I think I chose the one which you pay quarterly.
okay, yeah. So the video pad, the non-professional one, it just says get and then in-app purchases, which I assume is what you've got. The professional one is £99.99.
Yeah, I didn't pay quite that much, but I think I had different options on Windows, because I mean, it says professional here. I seem to remember there was one that said for commercial use, and I thought, well, really, I can get away with not being a commercial user.
Is that a one-off cost or a subscription?
I pay a subscription. Is that for Peter? Sorry, were you
Yeah. Well, for Martin.
Martin, sorry.
I'm looking now at the.
Oh yes, I was going to ask about orientation of screen.
Yeah, I tried to think what might be useful. I don't know if, sorry, Martin, I don't know if you're asking about the subscription. I don't.
Well, I'm on my Mac and I'm looking at the App Store, and it seems if you buy it through the App Store, then it's the free version is actually quite limited, and the professional version, which is $99.99, is a one-off charge.
Yeah, so that might be worth. I can't remember actually. It might have been when I bought this last April or March that I thought, well, I'll probably only need it for a quarter.
I've just looked at the on the actual NCH who make the software on their website. It's actually on discount at the moment, so it's 99, I presume Aussie dollars, but it's actually now discounted to 69.95 as well. So it might be a good time for people to get it. And then there is what they call the Masters Edition quarterly plan, which is £4.07 a month, which I guess is perhaps that's what you're using, Catherine.
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, this is just a few tips that I try to think of, but they're probably what I've already talked through. Making a plan for how you want it to look.
Catherine, I gotta go, but that's been really, really useful, and I will get that.
Good. Well, I don't know. I mean, there might be other options. I don't know. So I can't be sure. There might be something that's loads better. And if anyone finds
like the only thing I'd say, like I use, or well, Arwin can say that I've used for the just the little flute videos I was doing for my mum, a software called Filmora, which equally works pretty well. I think that also has kind of built-in split screen effects.
Okay.
I won't go into that because I really don't know very much about that. I just know enough to just about make it work.
Is it free?
No.
Yes, it's free, but you can pay to like kind of. So the free version, it exports with like just a little watermark in the bottom left and then a cut-off thing at the end. But yeah, I think you can pay. I think it's a one-time fee of about £70.
Yeah, I thought it was about 60. Yeah.
Yeah. 60, 70, but
this is called what, please?
Filmora.
Filmora.
O-R-A at the end.
Yes.
Yeah. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Martin.
Bye.
And I think in some ways, I don't know what the people who've led today feel about it, but perhaps another session at the end of the half term, or at the beginning of the next half term, because I don't know about other people, but I would want to go away and have a play around with this and find out what I was going to struggle with, and then maybe come back and have another session and go over some of the issues that we faced for those who've actually taken it further.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
Certainly from my point of view, if anybody has a specific question and just wants to get in touch, I'm very happy to pass on any knowledge that I have. But it seems like none of you are Apple people, which...
No, I am.
Oh, you are.
There's one or two of us.
Very happy to talk specifically if you wish.
Oh, and is there a fighting chance you might be able to send us the tips as part of an email or something so we can see them later?
Can I send it to you, Arwin? Would that be helpful?
Yes, it would. I mean, maybe if both of you could send me the files that you created to do your thing, and I can send those out as well. Let me just make a note to who is on this call. I'm not sure I can see everybody. We've got Stephen, Peter Howarth, Peter Rice, Martin, he's gone, Mac, Will, Dan, Peter, Matthew, Steve, Harris, and Chris. Right, okay, I've got the participants, so I will try and send you a link to the recording. Oh, and Colin as well, I mustn't forget him. a link to the recording, and maybe if Catherine and Stephen can send me your presentations that you did, then people have got that those tips in front of them. That's a good idea.
Great stuff.
Yeah, thank you.
Very useful. Thanks, Catherine.
Yes, thank you very much indeed.
Thanks so much,
All
everyone. Very good.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.